Your brain lies and your thoughts aren't facts.
I heard this crazy thing from a psychologist.
Motivation is a feeling and discipline is behavioral.
You are who you practice being, because that is action.
And when those two things aren't in alignment, it causes psychological distress. You're tuned into the Better Bloke podcast. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Rob.
We're just a couple of average blokes who started a charity with one simple mission: to fuck off suicide as the leading cause of death for Aussie men our own age.
We talk shit, ask the big questions, and chat with guests that have been through the ringer and have come out the other side with a story that's worth hearing.
All right, let's get stuck in. Another day, another episode, and on this one, we're going to be talking about the uncomfortable facts from psychology. Now, it's a bit of an awareness piece, because if you're not aware that this shit's going on, you're not going to be able to move forward and actually fix it. And when we looked into it, I guess it's things we've actually seen pop up time and time again, and also reoccurring things that kind of come up when we talk to blokes.
I mean, a lot of it comes up when we're talking to blokes, hence the fact that you said it's a reoccurring theme.
Reoccurring theme and rooted in psychology and philosophy for that matter. So that's what we're going to rip into today. Now, the first one is your brain lies and your thoughts aren't facts.
What do you mean by that?
Pretty much what your brain is doing is it's making informed decisions, right? It's making its best guesses. And that's every thought that pops into your brain, whether it's your beliefs, your feelings, your emotions. It doesn't mean it's right. What it's doing is making a calculation and going off all your past experiences. So whether that just be what's happened in your relationships, what's happened last time this happened to you, are we looking back at trauma and things like that? It's taking all those things into consideration and forecasting what the future holds for you.
Is that somewhat of a self-preservation thing for a lot of, I guess, people? Because it's not just men. It's a people thing that, just say going into a relationships, for example, a lot of the guys that we speak to have been burnt in the past. So moving forward into, I guess, new relationships, the lens they're looking through may be a little bit tarnished.
Yeah, and that's self-preservation 101. The brain is wired for survival, not wired for happiness. So that makes sense for everything. You touch something, you get burnt, you're not going to touch it again because you know it's hot. But that doesn't mean it's not going to cloud your judgment on things.
I guess, and that's sort of something that, just going off that fact that your brain is wired for survival, I can't speak for every bloke, but I know a lot of blokes that we speak to, and myself, for example, just say, I'll go for a walk in the afternoons with the kids. I know where every single dog is that is a low-lying fence. And before we even get to that, my automatic response is, feeling that protected provider style. You're preparing for what may happen. And it's never happened, but subconsciously I'm like, okay, shit could go down here. What are you going to do to preempt this happening? That shit takes a toll on a lot of guys if they're constantly going on thinking about that sort of thing. Yeah,
but that is also why all those thoughts are there. Like, same goes for fear, self-doubt, anger. Like, they're all there for a reason, right? It's to keep us alive and going as well as we can. But if we're looking at, self-development and progress and actually getting through life a little bit better, we have to be able to sort of reconcile with the fact that just because that's our knee-jerk reaction to something, it doesn't mean that should be our guiding light.
Oh, no, 100%. You definitely need to figure out the tools to be able to switch that off, because if you're not switching that off, that shit takes a toll.
Yeah, it's like your brain becomes this faulty crystal ball that shows you the future, but it doesn't mean that is the future. How many times have we seen men or women that have been through a really bad breakup, right? Happens a lot, right? Most people get,
yes.
I think at this stage, it's a majority of people get divorced, and they go into this sort of place where they can't trust the other gender. They don't want to date. They want to be by themselves. Fuck everyone else. I'll be happy by myself. That's not the case, obviously, because most people do end up partnering up again and, finding happiness again. But during that period of dealing with fear, betrayal, distrust, whatever it is, their brain's telling them, no, don't do that again. So it actually takes the work on yourself to be able to figure out, okay, what's real, what's not.
So touching on that about sort of learning the tools to be able to sort of get through it, I think it's important to mention the fact that, like, how your brain works. Your brain is very much like a radio, like Instagram algorithm, what you repeatedly think about is what is repeatedly going to show up and, I guess, affect your actions. If you keep sending dark humor, racist reels to the boys, that's what's going to show up in your feed. Allegedly. Allegedly.
Yeah. Who knows? Or big titty goth girls.
Yeah.
Rumination is what you're here to talk about.
Rumination. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain in layman terms what rumination is? I think we've touched on it previously on this podcast, but I think it'd be good to break it down into, a more simplified version.
Rumination is essentially just thinking a thought over and over again, sort of dwelling on it, like mulling it over in your mind. And more often than not, people are dwelling on the negative emotions. So they're sitting in a state of, this sucks for me, right? And research shows the more you ruminate, the more real the problem becomes. You get trapped in this pattern of negative thoughts, and that's where neuroplasticity comes into play, which is the brain, I guess, rewiring itself based on what you're feeding it, right? That's how we get over if someone has an injury and their brain's not working properly, the brain actually figures out a new way to learn how to do something by the repetition of you doing it. Same happens if you're training it to think about all these negative things. That is the way your brain starts to act.
Is that sort of touching on, and I don't like using the term this way because a lot of people may jump down our throats about it, but the term that everyone refers to with victim mentality. A lot of people will stay stuck in that cycle where it's, I don't like saying poor me, poor me, poor me, but they're not actually doing anything to, I guess, better their situation. And granted, it's very difficult to get out of their situation depending what it is, but no one does what's needed to get out of that.
Partly so, I guess. It's a lot easier to talk about something than it is to actually do it. And if you were to have an excuse, even if it's true, you can be a victim and have terrible shit happen, but that can't really define you, right? There's got to be a stage where it's okay, we need to move forward. Some people are never going to say sorry to you, right? Yeah, are we going to wait for them to say sorry? No, we're going to accept that some people are dicks and they're not going to do it.
A lot of people are dicks and they're not going to do it.
Yeah, someone breaks your heart, they're not going to come back to you. Whatever, you can't be the victim of that forever, right? That goes for everything. Obviously, bigger problems, harder to get over, but the core base of it is you need the accountability and action to sort of move forward. And yes, while you're stuck in that rumination thought pattern of going, oh, poor me, this sucks, that's how, you're going to start seeing the world. And that's, to take it back to the first point, your brain isn't always giving you truth signals.
I heard this crazy thing from a psychologist, and I'm going to share it with you. In your head, you've got two lines. Let's use Scar and Mufasa, for example, because that's what she used. You've got Scar. It's this evil, dark, sinister being. You've got Mufasa. Courage, bravery, everything a bloke wants to be. Which one wins is the one that you feed.
Yeah. So if they're pretty much representing thoughts.
Yep.
Right. And, there's just a stigma attached to certain words. So fear, self-doubt, criticism, comparison, these are all kind of negative. They're going to make you feel negatively about yourself. That's the dark. And then things like you mentioned, courage, kindness, empathy, doing good shit, and living in line with what you actually believe and value. That's the light. So the actions you take determine which one gets fed. I like the whole thing.
You're always going to sometimes feed that negative thought process though, because like we mentioned before, your natural instinct is to go down that way.
I want to talk about that because that's something that people are going to have to face. So especially if you're doing something outside of your comfort zone, just because the feelings and thoughts creep in, it doesn't mean that they're not factual. So if you're doing something hard, say you're starting a new business or going out on a limb, you're going to get self-doubt. You're going to get all these negative emotions that are part of the process. And the thing you're doing might be that thing that takes you to the next level or makes you feel, so much better about yourself. But it's part of the process to go through all those emotions.
Can you almost reverse engineer that? So I know there's conversations that you and I have had outside of sort of this podcast situation, that when we're thinking about, I guess, doing something, we will utilize those negative thoughts and almost play like a devil's advocate, where we go, okay, these are the problems. This is what's going to arise. How do we flip the script? How do we go around, I guess, utilizing, knowing what those issues are going to be and transforming them into a solution?
All right, so I'm going to paint a picture. Let's use like a potential listener that's doing some sort of trade. Let's say a Tyler, right? And he's working for the man and he wants to go out and set his own hours, make his own money and have a bit of more autonomy in what he's doing. I think it's fair to say that he's going to experience self-doubts, whether he can actually do it. He's going to be fearful that he can't provide for his family. He's going to be questioning if he's actually good enough to make this work by himself. And let's say the first 12 months in business is going to be hard, because it will be. So at the 6-month mark, the 9-month mark, all those feelings are going to be setting in pretty hard on him, especially when the money is running out and this and this and this. The only thing he has to keep him going is the idea that it's going to work. But there's no proof that it's going to work, right? And at that stage he's at, it would be the same place if he was to fail in another 12 months' time. There's no actual indicators other than the self-belief in yourself that it's going to work. So how you deal with those issues is recognizing that your brain's telling you lies sometimes.
That's like a really hard thing to comprehend, though, when everything in your mind is telling you that shit is getting hard and you're trying to, I guess, train your brain to be like, no, this is going to work. This is going to work. Undeniable proof when you don't have it.
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard, and you need to start thinking about identity, which we'll get into a bit, and you're doing it for a future version of yourself rather than yourself right now. But I'll tell you, like in my journey, I was thinking about this just a week or two ago, that even like this year, I had 2 months that were just like chaotic, terrible losses, right? I'm like, I could have given up at either of those, like a lot of people would have. But I'm just like, obviously push through, and you got to have that belief to do that. There's been studies done on entrepreneurs or successful people, and one of the top 3 traits is a high tolerance to risk. That is also why they go bankrupt so much.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm like, having a high tolerance to risk isn't necessarily a good thing.
But it is one of the markers for someone that you look at and is like, oh, they're successful. Probably because they risk more than you did.
And you only ever hear about like the success stories.
Yeah.
No one really, people do focus on the negatives in that situation, but the ones that are at the forefront of everyone's mind are those ones that took the gamble and paid off.
I think a lot of people preemptively fail because it's not failure until you quit, right? And yes, you might get to the stage where, you need money to pay rent and look after your kids. That's life. But a lot of people pull out just because it gets real hard and because they think they're getting those indicators where they've run 2 months of losses or whatever it is, but that's not necessarily an indicator that it's failing. It's just you need to somehow dig deep and find that belief that in the future, if you keep doing these things and you're being smart about it, you're following some sort of system or whatever it is, that if you do these things over time, it is going to work.
Yeah, well, consistency is key. And like we've had that just with the charity that we've been doing. Like we've had some events that we've done where, the weather's against us and we have minimal people rock up, and the effort that we've put in probably didn't get what we were expecting. But there's always silver linings to take from it. And I think that's one of those things that I just have to constantly remind myself that, maybe it wasn't the outcome that we were expecting, but there's always silver linings. So some of the conversations we may have had, or someone simply just seeing us on the way there to go do it. It works out. But yeah, it's really fucking hard to stay motivated to push through those hard thoughts.
It is hard to stay motivated, especially when that payoff could be a decade from now, right? Have you heard my boy Alex Hormozy talk about the Jingle Bells guy?
No.
It's a guy that invented the Jingle Bells tune.
I assumed that's what it was after you said
right?
it, yeah.
It's a fairly popular song. I'm sure most people know it. this guy lived a bit of a tragic life, right? He never really amounted to anything. He never did anything successful. I don't even know his name. You don't know his name. No one knows who he is. But towards the end of the life, he came up with Jingle Bells, which is arguably one of the most famous songs.
Probably the second most famous Christmas song behind Mariah Carey.
Yeah, and I'm sure she gets paid a lot more than him. So he lived a life of incredible mediocrity to achieve absolute excellence at the very end.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, at what stage do you trade off to doing that? Like, how much shit are you willing to eat for how much? I don't even want to say success. I want to say like achievement, accomplishment, fulfillment, those sort of things.
See, this is something like, I'm a big legacy guy, as you know. I don't know if I am that much of a legacy guy that I would trade off an entire life of mediocrity for like a long-standing legacy afterwards.
No, that is the most extreme of examples. But if you were to apply that to any situation I or a listener might be in, would you eat shit for 3 years to have a different outcome?
Maybe not shit, but I'd definitely eat like tuna and rice for 3 years.
There you go. But to actually do that and actually eat that tuna and rice every day, you need to be thinking about the position in 3 years' time.
Yeah. So what I'm taking from that is the risk worth the reward, and are you prepared to, I guess, sacrifice for your purpose?
Interesting thoughts. And I guess we kind of got a little bit sidetracked, but it goes back to that notion we started with, that your brain's sending you signals. They are just signals. They're not absolute truths. You are allowed to challenge them. You are allowed to take them down. You can change that. But it's important to note that you need to be aware of it.
Well, awareness is everything. That's why we're doing what we're doing.
All right. So now we're going to move on to the second sort of philosophical, psychological thought, and I want to get your reaction to it.
All right, here we go.
You're not who you think you are. You're who you practice being.
I agree and disagree. I wholly and solely agree that you are who you practice being, because that is action. But I feel like you need to think about who you want to be before you action it.
We've all heard the old like Cartesian saying, I think, therefore I am.
Yes.
Which is a very old sort of philosophical thing, which doesn't really line up with modern thinking.
Modern science and psychology sort of flipped that on its head, yeah. The ideology of that is that the mind and the body are two very separate things. So, you know, just because I'm thinking doesn't mean the body is going to react that way, where we've said it time and time again, the mind and the body is completely in unison. If you are thinking good, but you're not doing fuck all physical activity, eventually you're going to start thinking shit.
And it comes back to the idea of self as well, identity, like who you actually think you are. And I think as time has gone on, it's been proven that your behaviors and your actions are more important than your feelings when it comes to being who you say you are.
Well, for example, I could think I'm a boxer. Just because I think that, I went out and stood in front of 6,500 people and was proven that I'm not a boxer.
Yeah, just because you think you are doesn't mean you are.
100%. Like, it's all about actions.
I'm going to follow that up with another quote. Thoughts tell you who you think you are. Behaviors tell you who you actually are. And repetition tells you who you're going to become.
I completely agree that repetition shows you who you're going to be. The thoughts, though, not entirely sure, because I believe that you have to think about who you want to be before you start actioning that.
Yes, but I think the thoughts it's referring to are self-identity thoughts. I am this, right? Not I want to be this, therefore I'm going to go out and do some things. I think it's two different kinds of thoughts. It's talking more about self-identity.
Yep. Well, actually, that sort of goes into something that we were speaking about before, is what happens when you're saying that you're going to do something and you're not actually doing it. Do you want to go in and discuss that a little bit?
That is this thing called cognitive dissonance, right? And that's when your actions and thoughts aren't aligning, because you're kind of thinking of yourself as one thing, but the actions you're putting out there into the real world don't really back that up. And when those two things aren't in alignment, it causes psychological distress, right?
So just say, for example, we'll use that boxing thing for an example. I myself was like, yeah, sweet, I'm training so hard, I'm doing this. And yeah, I was training, but I probably could have been training harder. Before leading up to that fight, my mind played total fucking mind tricks on me. Are you ready? Are you going to be able to do this? You're not ready for this. All of these things, even though I was doing the work, I told myself that I was. Subconsciously, I probably knew that I wasn't doing enough, or I could have been doing more.
And that was in a short, condensed time frame.
Yeah.
Like if you extrapolate it out over years, right? If you just think inside yourself, I'm a kind person, but then more subtly, you're just not doing kind things like a lot, right? That's a lot less of a heightened example, but over time, that's going to have an effect on you, right? And then you're going to start creeping in with all these other negative thoughts, whether that be sort of the depression, the anxiety, or just self-loathing, because your beliefs are going to end up mimicking those actions that you're putting out there into the real world. Your body's like looking for equilibrium, right? And it starts with the action.
Do you reckon that's why there's so many people that are suffering from imposter syndrome? Because they're so used to telling themselves that, hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. They're not.
No, it's part of it. And if you think of we're talking about the self-identity in terms of what you're saying to yourself in your own head, but in more modern times, it's what you're putting on Instagram, right? So I wonder if it can be put out to that. If you're saying you're one thing out to the public, you're portraying this bullshit image. If that starts messing with you psychologically too, no doubt it does.
Oh, I'm sure it would. We've spoken to so many people that have got a decent presence on social media. And mind you, all the guys that we speak to are very authentic. So it's maybe not the same. But even them, they've come out and said, yeah, there is times that I struggle because what people see is not genuinely themselves.
Yeah. No, 100%. I get boys messaging me all the time because I'm guilty. I post the fun stuff. No one wants to see me working on a computer editing. So I don't post that. And then they see me do something cool. They're like, oh, dude, you live the best life. And I'm like, bro, it's a highlight reel. Just straight up, this is not what I do all day, every day by any means. So
yeah, I think that's people will see both of our Instagrams and you doing all this traveling stuff, me doing sort of all the fun family stuff or going out and doing cool shit. And they're not seeing you sitting behind a computer screen or me juggling a million fucking things or we both just have normal lives.
Well, I think that's everyone, right? Because to be fair, I don't want to see your normal life and you don't want to see my normal life. So we don't post it. Because it was at 12:45 a.m. last night, me sitting on the couch typing up some email. I'm not going to share that.
You should. People should start doing that more often.
No, it sucks. I want to talk about that whole idea we just spoke about, but related back to the Blokes Advice Group. Now, you know how many posts we get of guys at the start of some kind of journey. Often it's a weight loss journey and they're hyped up on motivation and they go to gym and then they post that post and they've started the journey, which is awesome. Power to them. But there's a difference between the guys that stick with it and actually, become that new self and the guys that fall off the train. And it probably comes down to discipline.
I think, yeah, it's that whole thing that everyone argues about is discipline versus motivation. And motivation is so easy to get. Discipline is what you want, though, because that's what's going to continue you to keep doing that hard shit over and over and over again. Motivation will only get you so far.
Motivation is a feeling and discipline is behavioral.
Well, that would be why discipline's what you want then.
Yeah, it is. But how do you get discipline? I think that's a bit, obviously, that everyone struggles with because it's one thing to say you're disciplined, but it's obviously a whole different kettle of fish to be disciplined.
See, I'm really bad with discipline. Unless I've got a motivating factor, I can't stay disciplined. Which I'm sure a lot of people are probably going to agree with that. Because, I don't know, if I'm weighing up going to gym or trying to be flexible with my time and maybe spending it with the kids or doing some stuff on the computer. I hate doing computer shit. That's you. But I have to fucking do it. So that's where my discipline doesn't really work unless I've got the motivating factor.
But that goes back to it though. Discipline is not motivation.
No.
So if you're actually disciplined, it doesn't matter if you want to do it or not. You do it because that's who you are.
Even if you don't like doing it, you still do it.
Yeah, that's like definitionally discipline, right? So it's got absolutely nothing to do with motivation. And then the thing is, eventually we go back to the neuroplasticity side of things. You're training your brain to act a certain way, and it's to do the thing. Like, I'm sounding a bit like Goggins here, and it's easier said than done. But yeah, I think the discipline factor is something you really have to work hard on to make that part of who you are.
See, we'll use gym for an example. I like going to gym, but it's the timing that I find difficult. So I have to train myself to think about that little carrot at the end of after training because I lack discipline. I wish there was a way that I could learn discipline.
Well, I actually looked up 4 ways you can be more disciplined if you're having dramas with that. And the first one is lowering the resistance, not upping the effort. So it's not going to gym 5 times. It's lowering the resistance to get you there 3 times a week. That could be laying out your clothes in the morning, right? Making sure there's time taken out of getting the kids ready, whatever it might be. Lowering the resistance to be able to do the thing you're trying to do. Rewarding the process, not just the outcome. So if your outcome is losing 20 kilos, by the time you get to 3 kilos, you haven't been rewarded yet, that's not going to help. Training your emotional resilience. Now, this is what ice baths are good for. The cold water in your blood vessels, whatever, that's kind of good, but what it's doing is getting you familiar with discomfort, right? So training yourself to be able to go through hard shit, and that's what we do. We just do the hard stuff. So same with meditation or breath work. It's about sitting through something, even if you don't really want to, and learning that you can get through it. And then lastly, it's attaching the idea of being disciplined to your own identity. So way down the track, you won't say, I have been disciplined. You say, I am disciplined. It's just who you are. There's no question about it. And once you have that, all these things don't seem to be that hard. You get out of gym at 6, not because you have to. It's because what you do. That's what you do.
I'm just a gym guy.
But that's essentially how you build discipline and some tips to get you there.
But you need to start by doing it.
That sort of leads into the self-perception theory. That's another thing a bloke called Daryl came up with in the 1970s. Apparently he had some degrees and whatnot.
Daryl's a very 1970s name.
Daryl's a G.
Yeah.
And it pretty much observed that your identity comes from doing the things. You can't be brave without doing brave things. You can't be kind without giving out kindness. And it's very much what we've spoken about for this whole section, but it's about doing the action to become what you are.
That very much leads into one of my favorite quotes by one of my boys from back in the day. Ask not what a good man is, be one.
Stoicism 101, baby.
Yeah, baby.
So we're looking at all these different, I guess, thought patterns. We're looking at philosophy. We're looking at psychology. We're going all the way back to the Stoicism. And they're all kind of saying the same thing. So it doesn't matter which avenue you feel more comfortable listening to. They're all sort of saying that the action and the behavior you actually make determines the person you're going to become.
So it sort of reinforces everything that we've been saying for so long, is that instead of just talking about shit, you have to actually go and do it. Mind you, we're sitting here talking about shit.
Yeah, but we also do a podcast, so doing the podcast is us doing it.
Or we can wrap up right now and we can go do it.
Let's go do it. Let's go make some action.
And for those listening along, let this be your motivating factor to go and get disciplined and go do some shit.
If you want to see anything we got going on, go to betterblokeproject.org. We got a heap of events coming up, including the 46 for 46 challenge, where we're going to be walking for 46 hours to help fuck off suicide for Aussie blokes, as well as spun some of the programs, the mental health first responder and the toolbox talks. Link in the bio if you do want to help donate and support that cause.
Be better. Thanks for tuning in. If you got anything out of this, be sure to show some love on whatever it is that you're listening on and follow us across all our socials.
If you want to know more, head to betterblokeproject.org, where you can learn about the programs we deliver, find out about upcoming events, and donate to the cause of building better blokes.